Okay, in this first section, in this 04 Monte Carlo, I've already got my alarm system, which is pre-wired from the previous preparation videos. As you can see, it's all laid out here. I've already taken the liberty of putting some 1/4" wire loom on this 3-pin harness that I've already twisted up. Now in here I have three. One is for my hood input wire. I have one here for my tach signal, and I have one for my siren output. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this screwdriver, and if you don't own one of these, this is a really good tool to have. It's just a really long screwdriver. They're lots of fun. And they make your job so much easier when you have to get a wire from here through the firewall and into that engine bay. So the way I do it is this. I usually take it, let a little bit of the wire cover the tip of my screwdriver, and I'll just wrap it around really tight. Depending on your situation in your car. This car here has a big grommet. And it's pretty forgiving, so I can take this, jam it through, and I'm going to go on the firewall side, pull it through, and then when it comes through, it's already going to be in the midway of my loom, so my wire is going to be protected on both sides, and that's very important. So let me get that wire through. I'll show you. I'll see you on the other side. Now right here you can see these are where my other 3 wires had come out, so I'm just going to grab those, pull them off my screwdriver. I'm just going to go around real quick, pull out that screwdriver. Okay, so my harness is through the firewall, all 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work from one point around. So my first one I want to connect is going to be my tach. And in this car, I know it's the white right here at the ignition module. Now if you need to figure out what your tach wire is in your car, the way you do it is just set your multimeter to AC. How I do it is like so. I just take my black probe, I ground it someplace in the engine bay, and over here, I already know what my tach is, so don't take me too seriously here. Over here, my white is my tach, and I'm going to probe that with the red on my multimeter. Now, when the car is running, this wire here should rest somewhere between 1.5 to 6 volts when the car is idling. And then the next trick, what you want to do is you're going to want to accelerate the car with the gas pedal just while this is on here, so that way you can verify that this wire is doing what it's supposed to do. So in this car, over here, if you see, this here is the throttle cable. So I can depress this while looking at my meter, and this should basically, you know, sit around 3 volts, and it should increase to around 6 volts the harder I accelerate. So that's going to verify that I am on the correct tach wire. I'm just going to make this tach connection. Alright, there is my tach, the white wire. Now I usually use insulation strippers, which you'll see that I'll use a lot later on in the video, but those can be a little overbearing on such small frail wires such as this one, so I choose to go this route, and I would suggest that you do the same, especially on a tach wire. That's a very important, I mean every wire is important, but that one's really important. The way I want to connect onto it, and you're going to see I do this on every connection. I strip back about 1.5 inches or so of the wire. As you can see here, I have a hole, and it's stripped back about 1/4 inch. I'd simply take my wire, go through it, close it up, and I just wrap it around, like so, kind of like a fishing knot. That wire is never going to come off. Then I just insulate it. Once onto my initial connection like so. I'm going to harness those all back together, then I'm going to go around it once again. There you go. So now this wire loom, and this is the first connection of this harness. I'm going to basically just cover the work that I've done and just go over it just a smidge. Then from here I'll continue on with another piece of wire. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take up these 2 wires. My brown is going to be from my siren positive output, so I'm going to run that over here, draw my siren right around here, which you're going to see. And this gray wire, I'm going to connect the mercury switch up onto the hood. And the mercury switch is going to do 2 things. One, if the hood is open, it's going to set up the alarm trigger. It'll trip it for a hood trigger. And secondly, if the hood is open, the remote start will not allow itself to engage, so it'll perform a safety feature as well. So I just usually take a piece of electrical tape from the point where I'm going to join my next piece of loom to wherever it's going to go. Usually I do it in a T. You don't have to be as anal as I am, but it wouldn't be me unless I was anal, right? So here's my brown, which is the next one I'm going to tackle, is my siren. So I'm just going to grab some of this 1/4 inch loom. Gonna kind of like leave that loosey-goosey like that for now. And then over here, I'm just gonna take a piece of tape and cap this off. Just this makes it impossible for the wires to ever get separated from the harness, because once they're in there, I like to make sure that they stay in there. So once I got that, I'm gonna leave this just kind of like that, just leave it chilling, and I'm gonna mount up my siren. But before I do so, you can see of the 2 wires, the red is going to connect to the brown, which is my positive output for my siren, and the black is the ground. So I'm going to throw a ring terminal on here. So we got the black ground on. Now the fun part is to try to hold all that together and screw it into that part of the engine bay. Before I do that, just to make my life a little simpler, I'm going to get rid of some of this excess wire on the wire loom, and I'm going to route this siren cable to right around where I want it to be at. And when I do so, I'm going to put a little bit of pre-thought, because you never know who's going to be in here next, and you don't want to be in ways of any of the stock harnesses ever, if you can ever avoid it. So I like to kind of like try to hide it and go around certain things like this one here to the best of my ability. Just making it. So again, I want to leave this little bit of extra loom here because I want to have to go onto here, cover my connection, and bring it all the way to the end to where the siren is going to ultimately be located, right over here. So the next move for me is to join these 2 wires together. So once that's done, I can finish looming this up. Then the only thing I have to worry about is screwing on this first one, and the second one just fighting to hold this ground on and shooting in the second screw at the same time. So you can see I got that nice and close. And that will make sure it stays on there. I mean, if you really want to be crazy, I'll show you how to get crazy. You can throw one in the middle if you're worried about it bunching up or falling off or whatever. So there you go. My siren is connected. Loom is all the way up to here. So no matter what, if any grease or oil or anything else ever gets onto this harness, it's totally protected. Not that a bad guy's ever going to have access to it, because number one, my harness is totally hidden in all this black loom, so it'll never be detectable. Secondly, it's impossible to get underneath this car to ever cut the siren wire. Number three, I'm going to go in here because when you shoot the siren in a downward position against other metallic objects, it's going to increase the output. So that's another good point. And lastly, when you mount your siren, make sure it's always going down. Never be it like this or anything over 90 degrees, because it'll start to collect water and it will destroy the speaker inside your siren. So when you do that, make sure you just don't ever mount it in the wrong position. What I'm going to do now is grab a couple self-tapping screws. If you don't know what self-tapping screws are, they look like this, the little wafer tech heads. These are little 1/4 inch guys, and you can see they have this little groove on the point there that'll grab right into the metal and eat it up and suck this right in there. And also, I didn't mention it, but this siren here has this little loop. If you cut this loop, it'll actually make a soft chirp when you arm and disarm, but I don't want that feature. I can actually do that through programming, so that way the end user, the customer, whoever the person is who's actually using your alarm system, will have the ability to change that to their own personal settings, and that should always be what your main focus is. So I'm going to shoot in the hardest of the two screws first. And I can see this is going to be harder than I thought. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove the siren, which is kind of causing me some grief. I'm actually going to start the screw first. And you'll see why in a second. Of course, Murphy's got to get his piece, always. Alright, so. God damn it. Murphy's Law. Never fails, never fails. Okay, there we go. One down, one to go.